lead us this morning?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and good morning. The first thing on our agenda is the consent agenda. Approval of minutes from September 5th, approval of payroll, approval of vouchers, sign monthly earnings and collections from the clerk of district court and sheriff, approve and sign the lease renewal for Thomas Boyd, approve and allow chair to sign annual snow removal agreement with the city of Powell, and consider approval for Friends of the Powell Library to allow participants in the writing group for beer and wine sip and write fundraiser. It's the pleasure of the board.
Madam Chair, will there be someone to monitor that someone's not gulping during sip and write?
I didn't read that in the paperwork that we
I
got.
move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Okay. We got that over fairly quickly, and our next thing is actually a public hearing, so it must start at the legal time that was advertised, which is 9:35, so we have a couple minutes. So.
I can strike it out. Discussion.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, super.
Like they're on.
Yep, they're working.
I can pass that.
I just do so. These, yeah,
we got both of these.
ones are the ones, and these are the new ones. Mention those. So this. So go in. We have all kinds of time.
Well, Hayden ended up fifth in the state in 2A golf.
What's that?
Hayden ended up fifth in the state in 2A golf.
Nice.
He was 2 strokes out of second. They had a
Should
terrible.
be used as mulligans.
Oh my God, 8.5 hours on Friday to do the course.
Why is that?
Well, it's a 9-hole, and so they had to
Oh,
go,
yeah.
and everybody just got basically. It was like
Well, so
90 degrees.
that's not fun school. Like they're like 1 to 4 feet.
Oh, yeah.
There would be.
Oh, yeah. Well, they were terrible. Except the kid that won.
Yeah.
So, which is fine. That's
My
his course.
grandson was in 12 after the first game of 3A, but he has 20 up, I think. But there's some big golfers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, the one for Everton.
Yeah. It's good. And the cook, I think, love it.
Oh,
She's amazing.
the girls won.
Yeah, that's how they.
That was cool. Yeah, he said it was absolutely brutal. In fact, they had a coaches meeting on it. Yeah. They had a coaches meeting on it on the next day because it started out the same way. It's just.
If I golf right, I'd be.
That does not happen. Hopefully. That was cool. Okay, it's 9:35. So the next thing on our agenda is public hearing for Pure Heart Resort SUP 239 amendment. We have with us our staff, Jenny and Kim. If you would like to do the presentation, that'd be great.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So Pure Heart Retreat SUP 239, this is a potential amendment. That's the request. The applicant is Michael Jemison. The property is in the North Fork planning area. The zoning district there is GR5. We did receive a special use permit application from the applicant in August of this year. And it requests an amendment to the conditions of the approved SUP 239. And the applicant requests an amendment which will allow longer term full season winter rental of their four lodging domes and use of the yoga studio during the winter months. History. So in April of 2022, the applicant requests approval of this SUP with site plan review for highway commercial business. That would consist of 4 lodging domes and 1 larger dome. That dome would be used as a yoga classroom. Smaller domes would be used for vacation rental business, short-term stays in the summer months, or possibly, I forget the exact days, but spring, summer, and fall possibly. Larger dome for yoga studio. Application included drawing showing the location, a site plan, and floor plans. Applicant also includes statements addressing how the use would be harmonious with the neighborhood and how services and infrastructure would be available. So on August 23rd of 2022, the board approved the Pure Heart Retreat SUP 239 and site plan, resolution 2022-82. That resolution included 7 conditions, one of which we have on the front page of our staff report. That was condition 3, and it said the applicant shall not operate the facility from November 15th through April 30th of each year, and that was consistent with Game and Fish recommendations. We have classified this and did classify this as highway commercial business. So we have on the bottom of page 1 amendments to approved special use permits. So our regulations say that minor changes to an approved special use permit may be approved by the planning director. Otherwise, special use permit may only be amended with approval of the board at a public hearing. If the amendment requires site plan review, the request shall proceed as a new application. An amended special use permit replaces the previous special use permit. So that language is essentially out of our regs. So the planning director determined that the proposed changes are not minor, and condition number 3 in the resolution that was approved by the board specifically prohibits the use from November 15th to April 30th of each year. As a result, we believe that this amended SUP, should it be approved, requires a hearing in public and approval of the board. Site plan review is required for highway commercial business use if the development includes construction of buildings exceeding 5,000 square feet or development entails more than 1 acre of land. So our conclusion is the proposed amendment does not require site plan review. Thus, therefore, the amendment shall not proceed as a new SUP application because the amendment does not require site plan review. So legal description of the property, 8 acres. The location is approximately 8 miles south of Highway 141620. It's on the west side of County Road 6DU, which is also Green Creek Road. Property is approximately 20 miles west of Cody. You see all that in figure 1. I mentioned this is in GRP zoning district. Highway commercial business uses are allowed in the GRP zoning district and in the North Fork planning area, provided an SUP is approved, which of course did occur. Neighboring uses, we have a map in figure 2 that shows neighboring uses are really a mixture of residential and residential vacant. And on figure 3, we have a topo map Site characteristics are this Pure Heart Retreat SUP is on property with a modest change in elevation. It decreases from south to north, and of course, Green Creek flows through the property, and there's a line of trees, as everyone knows, along Green Creek. And again, a topo map is shown in figure 3. We did include a site plan drawing. That's in figure 4. That was the original site plan drawing that was with the applicant and with the application and went through the special use permit process. It shows the applicant's residence. It also shows Green Creek and the trees along Green Creek. And it also shows utilities, water, septic, and electricity. I will mention, Madam Chair, that there's been a slight change in this site plan. When you look at that figure 4 site plan, most of the domes are kind of oriented north to south. Now the domes have been arranged to be more of a half circle, really south of the yoga studio dome and to the southeast and to the southwest. However, I will mention that yoga studio dome is still straight west of the residence, like this site plan shows. All of the domes are at least 100 feet from Green Creek, which was consistent with special site plan standards that uses in the Norfolk area, special use permit uses have to be at least 100 feet or should be, to the extent possible, 100 feet from any water course. The furthest, that dome that is furthest to the south, originally it was going to be about 60 feet from Kincaid Road, or actually I should say from the property line. Now it's about 90 feet. So there has been some minor changes in the site plan. We approved that, our planning director approved that. We consider those to be minor. Legal notices for this hearing, legal notices were put in the Cody Enterprise. One was on September 5th of this year. One was on September 12th. Written notice was mailed to property owners as required by our regs on August 25th. The staff report was shared with you, sent to the applicants, and made available to the public. In terms of agency referrals, we notified agencies. We did get some responses. Department of Ag stated they have no objection. To their knowledge, no food service will be performed. DEQ responded with their standard statement, their standard letter. We received a notice from the Park County Treasurer. Taxes are paid current. We did get a word back from Public Works. They said they have no additional comments beyond their original comments when the SUP was first considered. We got a response from the Wyoming Department of Fire Prevention and Electrical Safety, Jason Brose. He summarized the requirements for fire safety. We shared that with you as all these comments were shared with you. Weed and Pest responded. Mary said that a weed plan is already in place. She has no further comments. Game and Fish responded. So in an email on August 22nd of this year, Game and Fish said that, and reiterated, the use is within crucial mule deer winter range. They visited with the applicant, and now the department recommends additional operation of the use. Of course, it's up to your approval. But Game and Fish said they would essentially be fine with an allowance for the use to occur in addition to the spring, summer, and fall months from November 15th to February 28th. So they're basically saying they would recommend that the use does not incur in March and April of each year. We have in our staff report, no public comments have been received, Madam Chair. We have received public comments. We received a set of 3 over the weekend. We shared those with you. One was from Steve and Denise Shirley. They wrote in opposition to the special use permit amendment. They said domes were not put where they were supposed to be. They said domes are an eyesore. They said the Shirley said they were supposed to be hidden in the tree line. They also commented on the conservation of the area regarding wildlife. They said their concerns are the same as Game and Fish. We received an email from Marcia Brighton. She talked about limited season being consistent with what Game and Fish said. Marcia had some wildlife and environmental concerns that she mentioned. She also mentioned concerned about the water resources. She mentioned safety concerns, I think specifically in the winter months. And she talked again about the domes appear to be near the, she thought that originally the domes were supposed to be near the creek and out of view of Green Creek neighbors. We also, again, had a response this weekend, which we shared with you, from Bonnie Dowager. She mentioned that this was originally approved that it would not operate in the winter months, consistent with Game and Fish recommendation. Jemison said they originally planned to operate the structure short-term rentals during summer months. So those were those three. And we just shared with you two comments we just got. One is from Lori McCleary. She said, talked about the decks. Secondly, she talked about the Jemisons agreed to have this not operate in the winter. Talked about lighting. 4, talked about a garage, evidently, that the Jemisons haven't finished on their property. And then finally, we received a email or letter from Terry Bollinger May, again, mentioned Wyoming Game and Fish, recommended limited and restricted use of location. And Terry also mentioned safety concerns. Number 3, Terry mentioned placement of structures do not appear to align with the agreed upon site plan. And 4, the structures are unsightly and do not fit with the area. So, Madam Chair, those are the public comments. Madam Chair, I'll just mention, it's confusing to me because I've seen and read a lot of people who thought they understood that the domes would be close to the tree line, close to creek. Now, I know close is relative, but to my knowledge, the plan was always to have them at least 100 feet from the creek and tree line. So I'm not sure, but maybe that's close to some people. I don't know. Just saying. Approval standards. Compatibility and impacts, I will mention that, of course, last year, August 23rd, the board approved the Pure Heart Retreat, SUP 239, and site plan. Essentially, with that, the board determined that the proposed use is in harmony and compatible with the neighborhood. So our comment is now the proposed amendment is to extend the use into the winter months. We wrote that and this is our wording, essentially to us, that is not expected to result in an increase in use intensity. However, it will increase the use duration. Intensity meaning we don't believe this use will not increase the number of domes. If you do not approve this, the use in the spring, summer, and winter months, or spring, summer, and fall months will be the approximately same number of people. So we're not talking about an increase in the number of people in those months per week, but it will be a request to go in the winter months. And also, when the SUP was approved, the board found that adequate services and infrastructure are available. Madam Chair, we have a number of different findings. Our recommendation is, should the board approve the SUP amendment, we recommend the following conditions. These 7 conditions are exactly the same from the original SUP conditions, except number 3. So your number 3 had a shall not operate, I believe, from November 15 through the end of April. Now, number 3, should you approve this, and you can obviously change any of these conditions, add or take away, it says it shall not operate from March 1 to April 30th of each year. If you would, I'll just briefly read all 3. One is Park County noise lighting and other nuisance regulations shall apply. Number 2, the applicant shall have signage approved and placed in appropriate location to avoid the movement of traffic down Kincaid Trail past the facility driveway. Again, number 3, the applicant shall not operate the facility from March 1 to April 30th of each year, consistent with Game and Fish recommendations regarding human activity in crucial big game winter range. Number 4, The applicant shall construct an approved septic system to serve the domes prior to commencing the use. Number 5, the applicant shall submit building permit applications for each dome prior to commencing the use. Madam Chair, by the way, that has occurred. We do have building permits. And once project construction begins, all construction activities shall be completed within 12 months. Construction began in May of this year, just so you know. And number 7, the applicant shall otherwise comply with standards in the Park County Development Standards and Regulations. And we're happy to answer questions you may have.
Any questions at this time for staff? Hearing none, this is a public hearing. We do have several things noted as far as public comments that have been received in writing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this? Yes, ma'am. And if you would please stand and state your name for the record so everybody can hear.
Down. Two doors up essentially from the under retreat, and I did send you comments. It's my impression that the purpose of this hearing was strictly to discuss the particular item of the amendment, which has to do with winter use. And I think at the time of the other 3 hearings, all of which I attended, we all sort of agreed that the people that I was speaking with off that winter use was not to be accepted, and the Jeffersons, as part of their agreement to accept this SUP as it was written last August rather, agreed that that was absolutely okay with them. So nothing has changed since then. So I am concerned about the number of other people who sort of stood behind Game and Fish in their decision, and Game and Fish has changed their mind or has modified in some way. I'm not sure that means the other people who stood behind them then have modified their position. I think everybody, not really, the people that with whom I'm speaking feel very strongly that this is their habitat and it needs to be protected in the winter time. So even though I have written a statement, it repeats some of what's already been said just now. So I will only say that I think because that was the agreement and it was very carefully considered by Game and Fish at the time, planning, and by this commission itself, that their conditions have not changed, and I feel like the amendment should be denied.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Developer like to speak at this point or not? It's up to you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is your chance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to hand these out if you don't mind while I'm speaking.
Sure.
Having an updated photo and just a couple notes that we took.
I'll give, just so we're all on the same page, I kind of have these.
A lot, you know,
All this, and I did,
A lot of it.
Just so as we're going along, you can reference what we're talking about. These are actually just recycled maps that I drew on before. This one's the current location of the domes. But I'll explain that as we go along. Madam Chair, County Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss our desire to operate a year-round wellness retreat. As you know, the name is the Pure Heart Retreat, and it's to benefit our family, the local community, and guests staying in the domes. We believe that we can coexist in harmony with mule deer and other wildlife. I have some observations and steps that we've taken to help with our request to operate year-round. So all the years I've been living on the property, which is almost 6 years, whether it's hiking, biking, building trails, taking photos, working on the property, I've never seen a deer on the west side of the creek. Not to say that they don't exist, but just my observation and my patterns. And as you can see on the map, this is the west side of the creek. This is where the development lies. Our house and our residence, or the garage, is on the east side. The deer have always been on the east side where development has been in place for over 100 years, with Ned Frost building one of the first cabins on Green Creek. And then historically, Reverend, the guy who bought it from Ned Ross, Reverend Buswell, he would have little shacks and tent sites along the creek, which are still there, some of them. For summer church and Boy Scout camps. And things that we've done to help with the deer migration corridor, we've taken down sections of barbed wire fence. We don't cut or mow the native grasses. We water the local grass and the vegetation on the east side of the creek where they like to hang out, and some of them actually sleep on the property at times. We also consciously don't disturb or startle the deer with leaving them from the house. They're very comfortable. I mean, as residents around here, we can, especially in Green Creek, the deer live there with us, and we feel like we're not harming them. We have actually trained our adult dog, it's a German Shepherd, to not chase or bark at the deer. And we're training our puppies to follow suit. And we do not let them out when the deer are in our yard, which is usually in the mornings and in the evenings. We also have a dog kennel in place if we need to control the dogs, and we do plan on putting a fenced in yard. So, you know, if the guests show up or anything like that, they're not barking or chasing right or the deer. Some more observation. Like I said, the deer on the east side of the creek. And you can, okay, so what I did with that map I gave you, I kind of just drew some blue dotted lines just to show you where our observation, where the deer always are. With our location, there's kind of a grass, natural grass that really grows strongly on the east side of the creek, and that's where they really like to hang out. We also have a large garden that they like to snack on. They hang out. It's kind of a little sanctuary for them. The deer are feeding dusk till dawn. And they roam the property during the day. They sometimes sleep in the flower garden. They graze on the leftover garden. They seem comfortable with our human activity. And there's some observations and other things we plan on doing is, you know, if we're allowed to operate the yoga studio during the winter months, we can arrange class times to not disturb the deer, like at sunrise and sunset. And other things we've done, I haven't cut down a single tree for this development. It's foot traffic only. Visitors will park on the east side and they'll walk over to this area. They'll be parking in an already established parking area where currently I basically run my construction company out of. I'm always parking trailers and moving things there on a daily basis. So that doesn't seem to be an issue. We plan on restoring the area, adding natural grasses, plants, and actually watering. It's very dry over there. I feel like that's why the deer don't go over there that much, because it's very dry and it's also very open. They probably have more protection down on the creek and on the east side. We're also going to make our guests aware of the wildlife and have an informational booklet and with the migration patterns and information on that and other wildlife information. And also, I think the most important thing is the bear aware. If they're going to go out in the area and hike around. And also explaining the importance of not startling or approaching deer or other wildlife. to kind of sum it up, we have an intimate relationship and observations on our property. With all due respect, the game and fish agent that came out didn't even look at the dome site. He just stood in our driveway and explained that, you know, our property lies in the migration corridor. But we feel that a one size fits all recommendation and no human use doesn't take into consideration our observations and facts that I have presented today.
We need to keep moving, Mike, as
Yeah,
much as you
sorry.
can. Okay.
Anyways, you know, it's just how would anyone in this room feel if their own property was deemed no human use? I mean, we do live in a developed subdivision. And we designed and built it to exist in harmony with the surrounding wildlife and biodiversity. Taylor's gonna go into some more details, but thank you.
Yeah, we've only got about 4 minutes left, so.
4 minutes is all I need. I just wanted to point out that from a business perspective and running a studio, I have 4 or 5 teachers around town that are interested in coming out. I have black belt teachers from the martial arts academy that we go to who are wanting to come up and do self-defense classes. We have a massage therapist lined up to do massage. Like, there's really nothing going on in Wapping. So we feel that it would be an asset to the community to have a space where, and I have neighbors that have said that they would like to come up and do yoga with us. So we feel like this winter use would be an asset. I also wanted to point out that in the original permit, it is noted that our winter use has always been maintained the same. In the original permit, we did note that we wanted long-term rentals in the winter and we wanted to run the yoga studio in the winter. So that has never changed. The other thing is that 6 a.m. when the deer are rolling through is not a very busy time of day up there. It's very quiet, and we have in the highlighted sections of the papers we gave you, it's noted that because the disturbed area is less than 2 acres, the conditions for approval from the Fish and Game don't apply. They have this formal plan. I think it's like bullet points, A, B, C, and D is the first condition. They right here. So we are completely willing to comply with all of those regulations should we be allowed winter use. And if necessary, if that would help, we would go through the process of implementing these points as a formal plan in order to guarantee that the mule deer would remain safe over the winter. The March and April months that Fish and Game proposes that we close for, just from a perspective of having a wellness studio, it would be very challenging to tell students that they can't come for 2 months. You know, that from a teaching perspective, that's a difficult thing to implement. We also feel that once the mule deer migrate off our property, they're not milling around for 2 months. You know, once they're gone, they're gone. So human activity is not going to implement, or it's not going to affect the rest of their migration to Yellowstone. And just a follow up on the last 2 pages of this packet, there's some highlighted areas that are talking about wildlife corridors and preserving the habitat. And we feel like we have complied with those standards. And if Fish and Game wants to come out and actually look at the migration route and actually look at what we've done to maintain the natural habitat and not affect the water supply and actually increase the food supply for them by replanting and revegetating with natural grasses, all of that is in compliance with these standards. So we're concerned about habitat enhancement and the maintaining the corridors and the crucial habitat. So it is first and foremost on our minds. And if you look at the map, you can see clearly that where the deer migrate from our observations is undeveloped, and we have those natural corridors in place, and we will continue to maintain them, and we won't do any development in those areas. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this proposal? Okay, I'll ask one more time. Anybody else that would like to speak on this proposal?
Madam Chair, I move we close the public hearing. Second.
We moved in second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Hearing is closed. It's the pleasure of the board.
I'm sure I struggle with this one. I struggle with the game and fish dictating what's gonna happen on private ground. Although I realize and I make my livelihood with wildlife. And I mean, if you want to turn that back into natural habitat, you need to wipe the whole valley clean. There's development all through that valley. However, the folks came in earlier and they agreed, not just because of the game and fish, but because of neighbors, to a limited time of use, and that's how the ESUP was granted. So again, I'm struggling with changing that.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner Livingston, I agree to some extent. People's ambitions change. You can't fault somebody for wanting to improve on their own business or privately. I know there's a lot of concerns. I've read all of the concerned letters from the neighbors. And I know it was a concern before, but we took the advice of the professionals and they have since reevaluated and read the letter from Corey Klass, Wildlife Management Coordinator, and he seems content that it will be not harmful, any more harmful. So I'm going to take professionals' advice to what, like you said, there's already been a lot of disturbance in the area. So, you know, they've already done things to minimize by that weren't major impacts by encircling moving a little closer to cluster than it's spread out like they were for their domes. So anyway, I've been kind to approve.
Madam Chair, I believe that when we originally were discussing this, the main issue was through the game and fish. And I would agree with Commissioner Teal that we have the expert Corey Klass coming in and saying that, well, after further study and seeing what the applicants have already done, and obviously they care about the natural migration from the mule deer going into Yellowstone. So, and our decision before was based on what Game and Fish had to say about closing it down, and now they have amended that, and they've taken a further look at this. So I would agree with Commissioner Teal that and would make a motion to approve the Pure Heart Resort SUP amendment with the staff recommendations that were presented today.
Second.
Then moved and second to approve the amended SUP with the recommendation listed by staff. The only thing that I would mention, I agree that the Game and Fish has changed their thought process a little bit on how that works. And I guess we're still limiting, according to number 3, we would still be limiting those 2 months out of use, which was some of the discussion. I don't think we've got an answer to a couple of the other things that were brought up by the neighbors, and that being the lighting and things with having the other 5. I understand the yoga studio, and actually that's probably not something that would be used 24/7 or actually lit at night if it's a daytime business. That might be different than the 4 rentals. I don't know if that can be treated any differently. It doesn't talk about separating them out here, but it certainly in your discussion talked a little bit about separating out what you want to do with the business and the 1 yoga dome versus the other 4 rentals, which may appease the neighbors a little bit. If you're not having the rentals in the winter and just using the yoga dome during the day, I don't know. It's just a thought process that went through my mind as we talked about this. But and I also think that the domes did move a little bit out into the open space, which the neighbors weren't expecting. I agree that planning and zoning approved it, that you came in with the change and the site plan got approved. But I think that's where some of the neighbors were upset that they did move a little farther out into the open space where they were not expecting to be able to see them through the tree line. So I can understand some of their concerns. But any other discussion?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to add that the process that we've required for an amendment. They have came in and they're trying. So I mean,
Mhm.
I looking at what they asked before versus what they're asking now, I can't fault them at all because everybody wants to improve in some extent. You're concerned with some of the other issues, I believe are already covered in condition 1, you know, Park County noise, lighting and nuisance regulations shall apply. So I believe we've covered most everything. And in my opinion, I think they went through the process, they've answered the questions, they fulfilled it. I'm convinced that it's doable.
Madam Chair, I think we're focused. I understand I wasn't part of this before, but we're sitting here focused today on the wildlife issue. And I think some of the neighbors, from what I understand and read, agreed to some of this because of the limitation. So we're not only impacting wildlife here, we're also impacting neighbors by extending this period of time. So I think there's two things to look at, both the neighbor compatibility and wildlife.
I agree. Good. There is a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion fails.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you. Colleen, do you have a number for us?
Resolution 2023.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Okay. We'll move on to the next thing on our agenda. Next thing on our agenda is Williams' consideration of penalties. This one. Okay, with staff, we have Planning Director Joy Hill and Tim Delavan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did provide the board a SharePoint area for the materials I'm about to discuss. In there, you'll find an explanation of the violation and you'll find the enclosures that I'll be referring to. So on April 13th, 2023, Ben and Kathleen Williams, who are owners of the property addressed as 2631 Highway 120 Cody, which will now be referred to as the property, met with Planning and Zoning Department staff to discuss existing and planned uses on the property. If you see enclosure 1, that provides a map that came out of that discussion with the landowners, and it sort of shows the existing uses of the property and a little bit of their proposal to do some music stage area, an arena, and some other use. At the time, staff explained the regulations to the Williamses and the permitting requirements pertinent to their potential plans and suggested that they review the terms of their planned unit development, which is a PUD. And it's an agreement, a PUD agreement, which is recorded in book 269, starting at page 870 in the records of the clerk of the office of the clerk in Park County. If you see enclosure 2, that is a copy of the entire PUD agreement. The agreement identifies the types of uses that are permitted on the property, and staff told the Williamses that they did not have all of the permits necessary to operate the current or proposed uses on the property. And since that visit, staff has not received any new information or permit applications pertaining to the property. On June 27th, P&Z staff received an email from a member of the public who questioned whether an advertised music festival was permitted on the property. If you see, and actually that should be enclosure 3, my apologies. That email is in enclosure 3. Staff confirmed the advertising for the event, and being familiar with the property and permitted uses quickly recognized that the proposed festival was not permitted on the property. On June 29th, P and Z staff mailed a violation warning letter via certified mail to Ben and Kathleen Williams at the property address. On July 27th, the letter was returned to our office, see enclosure 4. By this time, P and Z staff had already received notice that the music festival activities were being advertised and held on the property. Social media posts, including but not limited to Facebook, the Facebook page for the W Arena, and radio announcements advertised summer-long events. P and Z staff investigated the uses on the property starting on August 28th, 2023. Findings are in enclosure 5. Note that in addition to the music festival, P and Z staff have found evidence of the property being used for equestrian clinics, shows and events, roping clinics, indoor and outdoor, livestock shelter sales, and a 2-day indoor archery event, among other uses. On August 25th, P and Z staff requested deputy delivery of a notice of violation and consideration of penalties to the property. Ms. Kathleen Williams was served the letter on the same date, and you can find that information in enclosure 6. So due to the PUD agreement, it's important to briefly touch upon the regulations in force at the time the agreement was established and to review some key parts of that PUD agreement and address the uses of the property since the PUD agreement was approved. So on September 27th, 1994, the board adopted the Park County Emergency Development Standards and Regulations. Those were the regulations in force at the time the PUD was approved. And then I've cited portions of those below to assist you with understanding some of the intent of those regulations. So you'll see in a definition for development agreement, which includes plan unit development agreement definition and subdivision agreement. PUD stands for Planned Unit Development Zoning District. That's really important. A PUD is nothing more than a zoning district. Planned Unit Development Agreement is an agreement by a developer or applicant with the county, which clearly establishes a developer's responsibility regarding project phasing, the establishment or improvement of public and private facilities, and any other mutually agreed upon terms and requirements adopted by the county. Section 5100 addresses the land use certificate. It shall be unlawful to locate, erect, construct, enlarge, change, structurally alter, or use any structure without first obtaining a land use certificate from the planning coordinator. No land use certificate shall be issued unless plans for the building, structure, or use has fully complied with the provisions of the land use implementation program. And the planning coordinator shall grant certificates when the proposed construction or use complies with the requirements set forth by the board and the standards and regulations. 5602 talks about land use classifications, which again, they are nothing more than zoning districts by definition in the regulations. Land use classifications establishes specific land uses which are permitted, special, accessory, or not allowed on each classified and unclassified unit of land in the unincorporated area of Park County. There's a table 5-2. It provides a complete listing of the land uses that are permitted, which includes by special use permit in each land use classification. Any uses not specifically permitted, included by special use permit, are not permitted. All uses shall conform to the general performance standards contained in the chapter and the requirements of the standards and regulations. And finally, 5602.07, planned unit development. The planned unit development district is designated to encourage innovation and flexibility in planning the development of land compatible with the site's physical and environmental characteristics, to harmonize with existing uses in the area, and to make more beneficial use of open space and the site's natural assets. The planned unit development district provides an opportunity for the development of mixture of uses and housing types in a coordinated manner. So focus on coordinated manner, not particular phrase. On August 8th of 1995, the board approved a land use reclassification. Again, that just basically means a change in zoning district from agricultural to planned unit development on this particular property. And the property in the PUD actually specifies a 63.18 acre parcel. The parcel has since been subdivided. The Williams property is approximately 35.16 acres. On page 12 of that planned unit development, there's a map that shows areas A and B. This property contains both planning area A and B. The portion of the property in question, however, is within planning area A, and that map is seen in enclosure 7. So on page 1 of the PUD, it provides a list of 22 primary uses that are permitted in planning area A. This is not unlike our current zoning regulations that show each zoning district and the types of things that are permitted. And then it shows the type of permit that's required in order for you to actually get approval for those uses. Note that the list does not indicate that all types of commercial, recreational, industrial, or entertainment uses are permitted. Pages 2 to 3, these are the performance standards. PUDs specifically had to address a list of characteristics, among them parking, height restrictions, lighting, outdoor advertising and signage, building standards, construction, wetlands. There's various things that were addressed in most, if not all, PUDs. On page 5, I'd really like you to focus on this particular section. This is performance standard number 8. This is in the PUD. It says construction, grading, excavation, use, and sewage disposal. Prior to the construction or placement of any building or structures or other improvements, the grading or excavation, or the use of any portion of the property owner, developer, builder shall obtain written approval and all permits required by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and any other local, state, or federal agencies with jurisdiction on the property. In addition, prior to the construction or use of any on-site sewage disposal system, the property owner, developer, builder shall obtain written approval from the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and any other agency with jurisdiction on the property. The key sentence follows. The county shall issue a land use certificate, small wastewater permit, and/or building permit at such time as the property owner shows that they have met the obligations herein contained. Pages 5 through 9 of the PUD have a number of definitions which are important. Page 9 talks about enforcement and breach of the provisions of the PUD. And then page 10 talks about the entire designation. So the designation contains all provisions and requirements incumbent upon the owner developer relative to the planned unit development agreement, except as modified by the subsequent action of the Board of County Commissioners in accordance with these procedures set forth herein, and except that nothing contained herein shall be construed as waiving any requirements of other regulations otherwise applicable to the development of the property. It's important to note the existing permitted uses on this property. So the Williamses did obtain quite a few use permits already from the county over the years. Those permitting applications started in 2007 and continued on through 2018. So as you'll see, there's a number of accessory type uses. There are 2 commercial storage unit uses on the property. 2 uses, a concession stand and a greenhouse, never came to be, so they were expired. And in 2015, when the Williamses submitted a permit for their large commercial storage operation, which is a 28,000 square foot structure, they were required to also go through site plan review at that time. If you remember, site plan review is for building permits. You know, you're not required to cite a special use permit, but if your building is over so many square feet and there's more than an acre of land being used, then you're subject to site plan review. At the time, the regulations, I believe, had the number set at 3,750 for square footage. That changed soon after that to 5,000, I believe. But anyway, this property has been through several permitting actions in the recent past. So at this time, and this is just from a cursory look at online social media pages on the internet, there's a U-Haul business operating. The Williamses themselves have told us this as well. There's an antique business operating. They're operating essentially event venues or recreational facilities, both an indoor and outdoor arena, an outdoor auditorium. We're not sure what other uses they may be operating. But what we did see is that anything from equestrian clinics, roping events, riding events, indoor archery events, music festival, the U-Haul business, different vendor shows potentially on this property. So it's been used for quite a few things, none of which have permits on file with the county. So some of our primary concerns, aside from just not following the terms of the PUD agreement and the county regulations, we look to access. So this particular property is accessed from a state highway. And in talking to YDOT, he confirmed that Williamses did not obtain the required special event permit or change of use approval to allow a high traffic access to the property. If you see enclosure 9, that includes Jack Hoffman's email regarding that particular subject. In talking to Jack, I explained to him that the commercial use of the property as it was for storage units and such, he didn't have any concerns about that. But as soon as you start to increase the use to include a lot of cars coming in for recreational events or entertainment, then he believes that a traffic safety study may be required. So there is a difference in YDOT's consideration of access to the property. Small wastewater. So we have no permitted small wastewater systems on this property. The home, I believe, according to assessor's records, was built in the late 1920s. The building permits that we have on file note a 2,000 gallon tank in the ground. I have no idea if the tank is functioning or if the system beyond the tank is existing or functioning. The Williamses did tell us during a meeting with us, I believe that they have it pumped regularly. I'm not confident that that particular system is actually functioning. I don't even know what's there. And therefore, if I don't know what's serving the home and potentially the offices that are on the property, I definitely am not confident that we have what we need to serve the public for public events and clinics and large musical events. Parking. So you saw the map of the property. The PUD has very specific parking requirements, pages of parking requirements. I feel certain that those parking requirements have not been met. Fire protection. Under proper review, the state fire marshal would be notified of the public use and assembly on this property, and their review and approval would be required. We certainly do not require it, but it's a concern of mine that it's a place of assembly. And we've been told by the state fire marshal that those types of uses require site plan review by the state fire marshal's office. We do have wetlands on the property. In fact, one of them is where they had cited the audience being placed for these music events. It's very clear in the PUD that the Corps of Engineers is supposed to review any proposed use of the property, in particular in the relation to the wetlands and any impacts on them. I couldn't say if these wetlands are still considered a concern by Corps of Engineers. That's up to them to decide, but it is a term of their PUD. And then there's the question of multiple uses. So in talking with the Williamses back in April, we explained to them one of the primary concerns is that our rules state that if you have more than 2 primary uses, you need to subdivide the land. And their own PUD defines all of these 22 things as primary uses. So if you have one of them, it's one primary use. You have 2, that's 2 primary uses. You go beyond that, you start to get up to 3 or more. We contend that our rules, the 2015 development standards and regulations, do apply in this particular case, and that they would still need to potentially subdivide to have those many uses or obtain a variance from the board to allow for multiple uses on the property. And they were told that in April when we met with them that they would have that option. So we received yesterday, and you, I believe, have a copy of this because you received it directly, a legal memorandum from Ms. Jaylee Meineke, who represents Ben and Kate Williams. I didn't have a chance to thoroughly dissect this entire document, but I just want to point out a few things. So Ms. Meineke contests that we have no authority to require permits. I think I've shown you in section 8 of the PUD that we very much do. It does not, in fact, allow all types of commercial and light industrial use. It very clearly lists the types of commercial, entertainment, recreation, and industrial uses that would be permissible on the property. They cited the types of uses that the Williams are having, including an auditorium, an antique store, U-Haul businesses, and riding arena, which we agree they're doing all of those things. Mentioned a P&Z board recently approving a multi-unit commercial subdivision to the south on the Valcarce property. That subdivision has not been approved. So the board, the Planning and Zoning Commission may have recommended approval, but it has not come before you for final approval. Let's see. Yeah, in section C1, Ms. Meineke mentions, this is exactly what Ben and Kate have been doing when hosting their music fest, and contends they're not in violation of the PUD agreement. I disagree. We're not prescribing uses be terminated other than that they haven't been permitted. If they went through the permitting process, they would likely be able to have some, if not all of the uses that they are seeking. I disagree that the 2015 zoning regulations do not apply to this use or any use on the property because it is a zoning district. And I would suggest that you seek advisement on whether Park County can penalize the lot owners for a violation of their PUD agreement. I would suggest that you check with Mr. Skorik on that. I disagree that we cannot disapprove activities because it's very clear that if they do not meet the permitting requirements in section 8 of their PUD, that we do not have to issue a permit. And I disagree that any of this is a taking. Takings are very specific, not to be used gently. We have not taken anything from the Williamses. Madam Chair, that's all I have at this time.
Questions for staff?
Not this time, Madam Chair.
This is not a public hearing, but I do believe there is people here that would like to speak to this issue. So if you would like to speak at this point, if you would address the board and state your name.
Madam Chair, I'm Jaylee Meineke. Ms. Hill just read some of my memo. This is an interesting legal question. I know you guys are probably tired of hearing that from me, but these PUDs, and especially these older ones, do create interesting legal questions, I think. This PUD was executed in 1999. As such, the planning and zoning regulations in 1999 are relevant. But Park County, through the commission or planning and zoning or any other governmental board, cannot pass regulations which modify the terms of the agreement. That's not how it works. This agreement is in, for all time until you and the Williamses modify it. That's not happened. So right now, these are the rules, not the 2015 regs, not any regs before that, just what was in effect in 99. That's legally how this works. I would agree with Ms. Hill that we should probably get our heads together with Brian and figure out what exactly the repercussions are. I will tell you that I do not believe there's been a violation of this PUD with these concerts. What is allowed, according to the PUD, unpermitted is recreational facilities, auditoriums, business retail services, all different types of commercial activities. And I would stand by my general classification that this is very, very, very broad. At the time, I think they were trying to open up that area. It was not being developed very well. It's out in that alkali field, and they were trying to get some businesses out there. The reason I pointed out the neighborhood and Ravens Ranch, which is just between Ben and Kate and the canal, is that there's going to be potentially, if the commission does pass this Ravens Ranch subdivision, an abundance of more businesses out there. So anything that Ben and Kate are doing is in concert with the neighborhood. We've got Bucky's Foundry there, we've got the gravel pit, we've got the old veterinary clinic, we've got the old game and fish clinic, we've got the Oxford, we've got the shooting range out there. We have all kinds of different commercial businesses out there, and what they're doing is completely in concert with that. Now, what Ms. Hill pointed out was paragraph 8 on page 5, where she indicated that she could require permits for construction, grading, excavation, use of sewage disposal. None of the concerts required construction, grading, excavation, or sewage disposal. They had porta potties out there when necessary. Ben converted an old shed, lean-to shed, into a stage, and that's where their concerts are held. And so we don't have any major construction out there. We don't have a bunch of pressure being put on the sewage disposal out there. So I don't think a permit was required, and I don't think that this PUD agreement contemplated that every time one of these uses was to be put in place, that they would have to come and get a permit. Now, granted, as Ms. Hill pointed out, there have been permits that have been acquired in the past for construction. Anytime they wanted to do construction, they came in and they got their site plan approved and they got their construction permits. But just using the existing facilities for concerts, I do not believe violates the PUD. I do not believe that the commission or planning and zoning can modify the terms of the PUD with the 2015 regulations. And I don't believe it would be proper to penalize them for having these concerts based upon the terms of the PUD. Now, that's kind of my spiel. And just for your edification, you might have this in front of you, but this is the Cody Canal. This is the attachment to the PUD. This is Andy Belcarci's property right here, which is in Area A. This is Ben and K to the north in Area A and also in Area B. This goes down to the reservoir and then the airport's right up here. So Highway 120 is here. And so the boundaries down here, gravel pit here, Old Game and Fish across the street, just kind of for your visual. And so they've been having their horse clinics, they have their multi-storage units, they have their U-Haul rental business, they have their antique store there. And I'm going to submit to you that the 40 or 50 people that have been coming to these concerts does not put any more pressure on the amount of people that come in and out of there every day with those businesses. They're allowed to have clinics at their arena, which far surpass the number of attendees at these concerts. So with all that in mind, I think that I would just ask you to review the PUD very carefully, visit with Brian, see, please proceed with caution before penalizing Ben and Kate. They thought they were operating under the terms of their PUD. They've had all kinds of uses out there with no problem. They did have a concert out there with a stampede in the past with no issues. And so they're a little bit confused and concerned about how these 2015 regs can just modify everything they've been doing for the past approximately 20 years. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Meineke, I just have one question and you can help me out here. In the PUD says they need to obtain written approval and permits. Are you saying that because this was put into place in 99, they don't have to ask for any permits that are required today?
I do not believe that they legally would have to follow any of the permitting requirements under the 2015 regs. What I believe would have to take place is the regs that were in place in 1999 when the PUD was executed is what governs. No governing body can regulate a modification of a contractual relationship. That's not how contracts work. And that's why this is an interesting legal issue. Because I think this is just my quantification, take it for what it will, but in 99, our regs were even more sparse than they are now. And we as a community have been working on them for a very long time. We're trying to catch up now with the VRBOs and everything that's happening. So back when I was first practicing, when these types of PUDs were very, very common, I think we were trying to allow industrial uses and development that our regs hadn't necessarily caught up with yet. So we were doing these PUDs. Now our regs are more developed and better able to cope with this type of thing, but our new regs cannot modify the old agreements. And so that's my answer to that. I think we have to stick with what was in place in 99, or you change the deal on everybody involved.
Yeah, I guess where I'm at is it doesn't say, there's no language in there that says permits required at the time of this PUD being approved. It just says you have to get the permit. So in following your thought process, and just help me out here, is if the federal permits changed, you don't believe that they would be required to follow that permitting based upon the language in this PUD?
Well, PUD does indicate that there are certain federal permits that must be acquired. But I think that is isolated to very specific circumstances that are set forth in paragraph 8. The uses are a completely different issue. And so, for example, I think if you wanted to put an airport there, obviously you'd have to get the proper FAA approval that's in effect now. However, if you want to just have one of those, recreational type uses or business type uses, I don't necessarily think that you need to have a permit to enjoy that use. And so I think that it's a very fine line we have to walk here.
Madam Chair, can I make a point of
Just one
clarification?
second. I was going to go to section 8. As you read it, you said construction, grading, excavation, and sewage disposal. You left out the word use, which is in that sentence. And that sentence is the one that talks about all the permitting. So it is in the way I read this, it is in that 99 document that a use would be required to have permit.
the way I read that paragraph, and this is the legal.
Sure.
You know, just
Sure.
the legalese, is it is talking about construction use, sewer use,
Doesn't.
all
say
of
that.
those things.
Okay.
Because if you needed a permit for the use as defined in those things on the
Mhm.
very first page,
Mhm.
I think those modifiers would have been put in the language. And we go, you know,
Okay.
we talked about this last time, but you guys have to interpret this
Mhm.
as a court would. And I believe a court take what we call imperametrate, meaning you have to look at each word in each
Mhm.
paragraph. And there is no permitting mandated for those uses on the first page.
Madam Chair, I have several points of clarification. First of all, the PUD was approved on August 8th of 1995. I believe Ms. Meineke is reading the commission expiration of the notary that signed for the PUD. It was August of 1995. So the rules that apply are the 1994 standards and regulations.
Okay.
And if you read the 1994 standards and regulations, it even shows the table of uses. And PUD is listed as one of the land use classifications, just like commercial ag, all the other zoning overlays. And it specifically says, yes, permits are required down the entire line specifically. So if we want to talk about rules applying, they applied then, they apply now. I'd like to address Ravens Ranch. Yes, Ravens Ranch was obviously looked at by Planning and Zoning Commission. They did propose a commercial subdivision. And it was interesting, the Williamses were very concerned at that time about what the Valcarces were planning to do with commercial use on their property. We did not at any time say that the uses they are doing are not in concert with their PUD at any time. All we said is they need to be permitted correctly. As for porta potties, we define porta potties as a small wastewater disposal system, and they do require a permit. They're staged constructed on the property for this use. If you want to talk about construction versus use, that's construction. There's also parking that would need to be addressed as part of the PUD. When we met with the Williamses in April, we asked them, well, how many people are you expecting on the property? And they said up to 300. That's not 40 or 20, that's 300. So we plan for 300, even 50 is a lot on that particular property. But those are the types of things that we factored into our concerns. I'd like to go back to the construction versus use. It's very clear in section 8. I'm going to read it again. The heading for section 8, construction, comma, grading, comma, excavation, comma, use, comma, and sewage disposal. Further, it says prior to the construction or placement of any building, structures, or other improvements, the grading or excavation or the use of any portion of the property is subjected to the permitting requirements. It's very clear. I don't think there's any questioning whether a permit shall or shall not be issued. Again, I keeps getting said that we've modified or tried to modify the PUD. In no manner have we offered to modify the PUD or said that they modified it or that we modified it. We are going by the list that is provided. We're going by the provisions that were provided in the PUD. And note, there's no airport listed in the 22 items there. She mentioned an airport. That would not be an allowable use, but other things are. And if they fall within those uses and can obtain all the proper permits from the appropriate agencies, including Park County, then they would be allowed to operate those uses. So we're not contending that the uses they're doing would not be under their PUD. We believe they very much match what the PUD is offering. We would just like them to get permitted.
And Madam Chair, I will just say with that permitting process, of course, there is an application.
Mhm.
And so when people come to us, they tell us, this is what I want to do. You know, we talk about septic, if it's appropriate. We talk about parking, we talk about access, which I think is appropriate as PUD. And then we can look at the PUD when they come in and tell us and do an application for a permit. We can say, oh yeah, it sounds like what you're doing fits into one of these things. It looks like it's allowed on the PUD, but we don't know that until we get an application, which is part of the permit, which is part of the permit process.
And
Yes,
Madam Chair, I'd like to
exactly.
add one more thing. I did speak with Brian Skorick about this particular issue, and I explained to him Ms. Meineke's memorandum. And my primary question for him was, first of all, should permits be issued? And his agreement was that yes, the permits should be issued. Certainly, he recommends that you seek advisement, you know, if you're not certain or if you have any questions about the applicability of current regulations in regard to this particular matter.
Thank you, Commissioner.
reading paragraph 8. Since 1995, did the applicant get building permits for any structures?
Yes.
So they do have those. So, I mean, this is a word game that I'm not a lawyer, but it says that the county shall issue the land use certificate, water, wastewater permit and / or building permit. As such, the property owner shows that they have obligated and so now that you looking at it may interpret that different, but at the time, they got a building permit, which covers. I mean, you know where I'm going with this?
Not really.
It's because it says and or. And if they came in and got a building permit, they fulfilled paragraph 8.
Okay, hypothetical, if you got a building permit for the large building. And it was, the use was listed and planning and zoning reviewed it, and this is hypothetical, I'm just asking. Planning and zoning reviewed it as a commercial storage building, which is the way it was requested and permitted. And then 5 years down the road, turn it into a roping arena or party place or concert place. Does that fit with the permitting process that you received when you got the permit? I have no idea. The use has changed. And so if you put the use on the permit application and the use changes, how does that track? I don't know. And I guess that's one of our legal questions.
Yeah,
And
no, that's what.
Mike, you mentioned that, we need to get a little deeper on some of these and understand them a little bit better. That's understood. So pleasure the board at this time, if there's no other comments. Okay.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we seek legal advice on this.
In Madam Chair, I'll leave that.
That doesn't need to
It's
be-
not, that's administrative. It's not going to be a require motion. Not one that's due. Yeah,
Okay.
we just,
Okay, so the board is comfortable with leaving this as it is right now and having the discussion with our legal counsel
Okay.
as we look at this whole picture. Okay. Looks like that's what we'll do. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks. Molly, would you set something up with Mr. Storick in the next month on the agendas and see what works? Please. Yeah. We're close. You get about 3 minutes for your break.
done.
I have a question for staff.
Oh, sorry.
Jennifer, and I think you must need a raise or something. I mean, this gray hair, did it just come on because?
Jeez. Oh,
It's the strap.
It is, I'm sure. I never had any gray in my beard
I
either.
didn't have any gray in my beard when I was a kid.
Well,
Yeah. Actually, I had no gray in my beard until I had a daughter.
Well, I'm glad I didn't go there. Yeah, said boys. Okay, we'll give Scott a minute. These are Colleen's. Those are Colleen's.
Darcy, did you share that thing about?
About what? Oh, I will. I'll find it again.
They find
My
each
cell, let me see what date on it that I got it.
Hello. All right, good. Are you doing?
So Molly, make copies of it. Molly, could you make a couple, 4 copies of this? Oh, you don't have a copier?
Yeah,
Okay.
next month.
Next month's in the library.
Let me see if I can find where she sent that. A while ago.
We actually had on your office and it's.
Scott, here's one to look at. We'll run downstairs and get a copy before we all leave. We don't have a copy machine up here, so. Okay, with that, the next item on our agenda, Kim Delvin and Jenny with Clark County Planning and Zoning. Cardo's simple subdivision number 292 final plat.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So this property is in a GR5 zoning district. The planning area is Cody Local. The applicant is Mr. Cardos. We received a final plat application from the applicant on June 9th of this year. Then we received a revised final plat on August 28th of this year. And you see that in figure 1, the final plat. The applicant requests approval of this final plat. He will create a 2-lot subdivision. Both lots will be 7.73 acres. There'll be a 35-acre remaining parcel. The lots are designated for residential use. And the zoning district, as I mentioned, is GR5. The lot sizes as proposed are consistent with that zoning district. Of course, we have classified this because it is 2 lots as a simple subdivision. Background, so in October of 2021, we had a pre-app meeting with Mr. Cardos. He said he was interested in subdividing this property. He indicated at the time that annexation into the city of Cody was not financially feasible. And he said without annexation, public sewer and water would not be available. At the time, this property was in the RH zoning district, which our regs say require municipal sewer and water. So then in April of 2022, Mr. Cardos met with us and talked about the requirements for a zoning map amendment. So there was a public hearing on September 6th of 2022, and the board approved a zoning map amendment. And we have that attached. It was resolution 2022-86. That changed this property zoning from residential 1/2 acre to GR5. Now it is in GR5. The location of the property you can see in figure 2. It's just southwest of the city of Cody. It's just west of Highway 291. It's south of Pauley Avenue. In figure 3, you see neighboring land uses. To the northeast, there are subdivisions. So those obviously are residential vacant lots. The Shoshone Municipal Water Plant, also you can see it in figure 3. It's just south of this property. And there's some commercial and residential and ag uses in the area. In terms of site characteristics, we have a topo map shown in figure 4. The property slopes downward somewhat from the southwest to the northeast. Eastern half of the property, there are ditches, water ditches carrying irrigation water from the southeast to the north through the proposed lots. And again, that's shown in figure 4, that topo map. Municipal review, this property is within a mile of the city of Cody. So we reached out to the city of Cody for a response. We did get a response. I'll mention that in the agency notices. So this, of course, is the final plat review, and it's a simple subdivision. So this is not a public hearing. However, with any subdivision, a notice of intent to subdivide has to be in a paper. That was in the Cody Enterprise in May of 2022. So agency referrals, of course, we notify agencies that we're required to notify, and we notify those we think might have a relevant interest. Park County Fire District responded. We attached that to this packet. They responded with the equipment they would need to respond to emergency. TCT responded. They said they may be able to provide internet service and phone service. Shoshone Municipal Pipeline, we did receive several comments from the Shoshone Municipal Water, the Shoshone Municipal, is it Pipeline District? Okay. And so Craig Burness talked about an easement for their pipeline and also a drainage canal. Emergency flow should it be necessary. We've had several emails and phone conversations with Craig. One, he talked about a reservoir overflow discharge that said, he said would not impact this property. Craig also talked about a basin overflow discharge that is intentionally overflowed annually. Craig said that barely touches the Cardos property, and he feels it will not impact the proposed lots. And again, we shared those attachments with you, Madam Chair. We had a response from Weed and Pest. Initial inspection by Mary found Russian olive on the property. She said a long-term noxious weed management plan will be required. We received a response from Black Hills Energy. They said that they have a main parallel to the South Fork Road. They do have sufficient volume to supply natural gas should it be necessary to these lots. We received a response from Northwest Rural Water District. They said their closest infrastructure is a half-mile distant. And they said at the time, this was in May of 2022, there was a temporary hold. We received a response from Rocky Mountain Power. They said they do have the capacity to provide electricity to these lots should it be necessary. We received a response from the Postal Service. They'll be able to deliver on their mail route. We received a response from Cody Conservation District. They identified 3 soil types on the property, talked about whether or not they're limited and what those limitations are, if anything. We received an initial response from the treasurer saying property taxes are current for 2021. Then we received another response from the treasurer saying taxes were not paid for the 2022 year by the applicant. And property taxes will need to be paid by the applicant. A response from YDOT stated they have no concerns provided the subdivision accesses Highway 291 via Pauley Avenue or Agua Via. We received a response, as I mentioned, from City of Cody. City recommends dedication of a 60-foot wide public right-of-way for Pauley Avenue. They said the road should remain private. We received a response from Game and Fish. They had no wildlife comments. They continue to be concerned with the amount of subdivisions proposed, and they also provided their standard subdivision recommendations. We received the typical response from DEQ, standard letter. Public Works responded. They said legal access is from Pauley Avenue. They said it's a private drive. Public Works said this subdivision will not alter their classification of Pauley Avenue. Public Works mentioned YDOT has jurisdiction over the access from the state highway. Public Works said the existing easement width of 40 feet on Pauley Avenue does not meet Park County's standards. However, Public Works concluded that 40-foot wide easement or right-of-way or easement on Pauley Avenue is sufficient for the proposed development. So Public Works also recommends that the owners of the proposed lot be subject to any existing or future road maintenance agreements associated with Pauley Avenue. And of course, developed lots must be addressed in accordance with Park County addressing standards, and Public Works said a drainage and erosion control plan will not be required. Madam Chair, we also received several comments from Cody Canal Irrigation District. They said the proposed lots are not within their jurisdiction. However, they said the remaining parcel is, and they said if that, excuse me, if that remaining parcel divided in the future will require Cody Canal Irrigation approval. We received an email from them in June of this year, end of June, and then Cody Canal confirmed no water rights on the parcel. There's a management change point between Cody Canal and Indian Pass Ditch Association. They said that is correct on the final plat, and you can see where I believe that change is it essentially at the Y is where that's my understanding. The ditch to the Cody Canal said the ditch to the west is owned by Day Company. The ditch running northeast serves the Indian Pass Ditch Association, Valley View, and lands over the hill to a different area. Cody Canal said they're not aware of any easements. And Cody Canal said the easement width for Cody Canal was 75 feet. And then the 45-foot wide easement was later approved by Cody Canal. We also received a response from the Indian Ditch Association. Colin Simpson, on behalf of them, made some comments. He said that Cody Canal recommends an easement along the Indian Pass ditch to be no less than 45 feet in width. Colin said that Indian Pass would likely recommend the same. In an email in July of this year, Colin indicated the Indian Pass board has not yet approved the easement width. They talked about culverts. Further correspondence in July between Cody Canal, Indian Pass, and the applicant's representative, a 45-foot easement was approved for the Cody Canal managed ditch and for the Indian Pass ditches. And there's some other language there. I think maybe that's the essence of it. Jennifer, do you agree? Is that enough?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And we can answer comments if we can when we get there. Public comments. We did receive a letter. This was back in October 22. It was in regard to the Boot and Bottle Club. This letter, which we shared with you, talked about a statement in Public Works Engineering Review that a representative from Boot and Bottle was part of a meeting and confirmed. They said this person claimed they're working with the applicant to complete an easement exchange. The Boot and Bottle Club in their letter asserted this person that made that comment was not authorized by the board of directors. Essentially, that's the essence of that letter. Madam Chair, Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the simple subdivision sketch plan in a meeting on October 21st of 2022. Resolution, there were conditions. I'll just mention briefly some of these conditions. One was applicant placed a note on the plat regarding water wells. That condition has been met. Their third recommended condition was a response from Cody Canal. That condition has been met. Their fourth recommended condition was a response from Indian Pass. That condition has been met. Their fifth recommended condition was in review by Public Works. That condition has been met. Their sixth recommended condition was a notice from the Wyoming Right to Farm and Ranch Act. That condition has been met. Plat Review Committee, of course, that's required. Plat Review Committee met on June 26th of this year. There were some minor corrections and changes. As I mentioned, we did then get an updated final plat, and you saw that in Figure 1. Then we have our submissions and requirements for final plat review. We have a number of findings of fact. Our recommendation is that you approve the final plat of Cardinal Simple Subdivision 292 with the following conditions. Number one, our first recommended condition is the applicant shall provide all easements as requested by applicable utilities and special districts, irrigation district, or public agencies providing services. The width of any utility easement shall be sufficient to allow adequate maintenance of the system, but in no case shall such utility easement be less than 20 feet in width. Easements must be identified on the final plat. Number two, the applicant shall provide evidence that property taxes are paid in full for the parcel to the planning, the evidence, not the payment, the evidence to the Planning and Zoning Department prior to the Madam Chairman signing the final plat. Number three, the applicant shall provide an approved long-term noxious weed management plan to the Planning and Zoning Department prior to recording the final plat. And four, the applicant shall otherwise comply with standards in the Park County Development Regulations and the minimum subdivision requirements set forth in Wyoming Statute 185306. We're happy to answer questions should you have any.
Questions from the commissioners? Not a public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, Kim. Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. Madam Chair?
Resolution 2023-54.
All right, thank you, Colleen.
I did just get a text from the Giants. They went to the wrong location, so
On their way.
they're on their way.
Sorry for the confusion.
He's okay with the subdivision with the neighbors.
This one that just happened?
Yeah.
They're on
I
their way.
didn't confirm with the neighbor.
There goes his.
They might want to confer with the
There
neighbor.
goes his prairie dog hole.
Yeah.
Can you scan in that agenda for Waco and email it to everybody? Your computer?
You can just go on the,
Have it
I went online. You can go online and sign it.
either way.
So I do have a question, a procedural question. When you comes time for signing final plats. How do you remember or know that there's a condition?
I put it on their plate. They don't call me until all the conditions have been met. They tell me that it's ready.
Going to be up in Blackberry Park.
Well, I don't sign them until I. and then when-
And how, and they,
3 weeks.
And on that, Louis, all the documents that are required have to come with that final plan. And so once, because now, all of those numbers are recorded.
in reference to like the property tax being paid and so
Right.
forth.
Right. So they don't call me until they've checked out.
Yeah. We'll check everything.
That's done by.
Was Sam's gonna come up for the LGLP, Colleen?
And he's emailed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's fine. If he thinks he needs to, we'll wait. If he doesn't, then we can do
I
it.
don't even remember where you did that.
You can Send it to Molly.
Oh, hands. Are you coming up for the LGLP board vacancy?
Having a park.
You want him to?
No, it's up to you.
No, it's up to you.
It'll be a party.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know, I didn't see it.
No, it's fine. It's pretty.
Is it a voting form?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty simple. It's nomination.
Oh, it's just a nomination.
And right after this,
We should just take.
I just go to lunch. And avoid the office for the rest of the day.
Just. Okay.
Yes.
So if you have a nomination that you guys would like to make, that's all this would do is get those. That person. Nominated so they would appear.
Okay.
Commissioner Teal.
So since we're waiting on the guidance due to our relocation issues, let's go ahead and move to our 1120, which is nominations for LGLP board vacancies. And you can see that is government positions. They do have, I think there's an explanation letter that talked about the 3 that are currently in those seats. Let's see. States the board shall be comprised of 2 county commissioners, 2 elected municipal officers, and 2 representatives of special election districts, and 1 at large. The term of 3 board members expire on December 31st. All 3 current members intend to seek re-election. Positions up for election this fall are 1 county commissioner, 1 elected municipal official, and 1 special district position. The board positions are 3-year terms. So if this board has a nomination for a commissioner for the position on the LGLP board, we would do that at this time. I'm not hearing anything, so I assume that means we do not have a nomination to put forward. True? Okay.
I haven't heard of any lobbying by any of the current commissioners.
Okay, so we will not be submitting anything, Chloe. Okay, I think, apologize for the confusion on locations. We're still in kind of a mess
Next
here
week,
trying to,
next-
yeah,
next
next
meeting.
meeting will be up there.
Yeah.
But, so the next thing on our agenda, Kim Dillon, Park County Planning Director with Jenny, Gynes, simple subdivision number 313, final plat.
All right, thank you, Madam
you.
Chair. So the applicants for this project are Colby and Cody Gynes. This property is in the GRP zoning district. The planning area is Cody Powell Rural. We did receive the final plat application from the applicants in September of this year. That included the final plat. And then we received a revised final plat on September 13th of this year. You saw that in figure 1. The requested action is approval of this final plat. Should it be approved, it will create a 2-lot subdivision. One lot will be 3.83 acres. One lot will be 31.13 acres for residential and agriculture use. The existing parcel is just over, slightly over 35 acres. The location of the property that is shown in figure 2, it's approximately 5 miles southwest of Powell. It's 1.5 miles south of Ralston. It's on the north side of lane 14. It's on the east side of Joslyn Drive. Property currently does have an address of 15 Joslyn Drive. In figure 3, you see a map with neighboring land uses. The property is surrounded primarily by residential agriculture and residential vacant land. There are some subdivisions west and south of this proposed subdivision. Site characteristics are proposed lot 1 is developed. It has a residence, some outbuildings, a septic, and a well. Proposed lot 2 is currently in agriculture production. And you see in figure 4 a topo map, and the property really has very little change in elevation. In terms of municipal review, the property is not within a mile of any city. Municipal review is not required. I mentioned this property is in GRP zoning district. The lot sizes as proposed are consistent with that district. Again, this is a simple subdivision. Of course, this is final plat review. It's not a public hearing, but all subdivisions require notice of intent to subdivide. For this subdivision, that was in the Powell Tribune. It occurred on July 13th and July 20th of this year. We are required to notify agents, a list of agencies. We notify others we think might have an interest. Park County School District 1 said, they responded, they said they will be able to provide bus service. TCT responded, they can provide internet service and phone service. Park County Fire District 1 responded, they can provide fire protection should accesses accommodate their fire equipment. Powell Clarksville Conservation District, of course, we are required to get a soils report. They gave us a soils report and a cover letter. That was in July of this year. And you see on figure 7, a nice table that Jenny created showing the 4 soils and their classification and any restrictions and the reason for the restrictions. Game and Fish responded. They have no wildlife comments. They offered their standard subdivision recommendations. DEQ responded with their standard letter. Park County Treasurer said that property taxes are paid in full. Willwood Irrigation responded by phone and email. They said they will require the applicant to provide correspondence from the state engineer's office to confirm water rights. They had some other statements. You saw that in that email correspondence. And then we did get a letter in September of this year from Willwood Irrigation District. They said that the water distribution plan for the subdivision was reviewed. It was approved at their meeting on September 7th. We received a response from Weed and Pest in initial inspection. Mary said noxious weed species were found, would require a weed management plan. That plan has been approved by Mary. Garden Light and Power responded. They said they currently provide service to proposed lot 1. They have the capacity to provide service to lot 2. Postal Service stated that they can deliver mail to new addresses. Black Hills Energy responded. They said they currently serve 50 Joslyn Drive, which is proposed lot 1. And they said they do not see any issues with providing service to the other lot. Public Works responded. That first bullet you see, Madam Chair, in the middle of page A, they talk about the different legal access. Some of it is to lane 14, some is to Joslyn Drive. I think the essence of that paragraph is that legal access exists to both these lots, either from both lane 14 or Joslyn Drive, or for one or the other. Public Works also said, to their knowledge, no new roads are proposed, and that's to our knowledge as well. Public Works said they're not aware of any existing road maintenance agreement for Joslyn Drive. They did recommend that the lots be required to be part of a road maintenance agreement, and we do have a shared road maintenance agreement that has been provided by the applicants for recording with the final plat. Public Works said, of course, developed lots must be addressed in accordance with their standards. Any new accesses must have, again, a right-of-way permit approved by Public Works, and Public Works said an erosion and a drainage and erosion control plan will not be required. We've not received any public comments. Planning and Zoning recommended approval of this subdivision. They looked, of course, at the sketch plan. They looked at that and approved it, or recommended approval on August 16th of this year. They had a number of recommended conditions. Number 2 was a response and evidence from Willwood that their requirements have been met. That condition has been met. P&Z's third recommended condition was a long-term noxious weed management plan. That condition has been met. Their fourth recommended condition was a response from Public Works. That condition has been met. Their fifth recommended condition was either a shared road maintenance agreement agreement or something on a notarized disclosure statement. Again, a shared road maintenance agreement is going to be recorded with the final plat. Their sixth recommended condition was in regard to water wells. That condition has been met. Their seventh recommended condition was dealt with approaches. That condition has been met. Their eighth recommended condition was in regard to the Wyoming Right to Farm and Ranch Act. That condition has been met. The Plat Review Committee met on September 8th of this year. There were some minor changes and corrections. We did get a revised final plat, which is in Figure 1. We got that on September 13th. Again, all the supporting documents and requirements for final plat review. We have a number of findings. We recommend approval of the final plat of Guine Simple Subdivision 313 with the following conditions. 1, the applicant shall provide all easements as requested by applicable utilities and special districts, irrigation districts, or public agencies providing services. The width of any utility easement shall be sufficient to allow adequate maintenance of the system, but in no case shall such utility easement be less than 20 feet in width. Easements must be identified on the final plat. Number 2 of our recommended conditions, the applicant shall otherwise comply with standards in the Park County development regulations and the minimum subdivision requirements as set forth in Wyoming Statute 185306. And Madam Chair, we're happy to answer questions should you have any.
I just have one that came up under Black Hills Energy. You talk about they don't foresee an issue with serving the proposed lot 2. Then they follow that with a statement that says, however, they will make a final determination when service is requested. Is that usually dealing more with location than anything? I mean, where the service is, or?
To my knowledge, you mean it's not in terms of their capacity, but just in the location?
Right.
Do you have insight?
Yeah, I'm really not
I
sure.
don't
It is
remember
a- it
seeing
is
that
a big
before.
Standard, oh, I think they do standardly
Yeah,
say
me,
that, but I'm not sure if it's based on location. I'm not sure which side of.
Yeah. Perhaps, Madam Chair, it's just
Okay.
a standard caveat. Can't guarantee anything,
Right,
Yeah, true.
right. yes.
Okay,
maybe.
thank you.
Unwilling to-
Any other questions from the commissioners for this proposal? Hearing none,
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
then moved and seconded to approve Guyan Simple Subdivision number 313 final plat. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, resolution 2023-65.
Super.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Yes.
Chico.
Do you want me? I can carry that.
Okay, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but that's not gonna hurt anything until we see when Cindy gets here.
Got stuff.
The next thing on our agenda actually is the HVAC thing, and the only thing really wanted to talk about on that, number one is we're all aware now that our next meeting will be at the Grizzly Room. Our staff meetings will be held in a meeting room on the second floor, near the current, what will be the current county commissioner's office and planning and zoning. If we have staff meetings, they'll be held there. There are a couple of things. The library does not open until 9. Molly has a key to the elevators. If we need to get up and down, we'll deal with Molly that way, depending on the timing. But the library probably will not open until 9, but 90% of our public agenda never starts until 9:30. So we should be fine on that scenario and they should be covered. Again, it's a need for your laptops right now until we decide how we're gonna make that work, or if not, if it doesn't work. We'll know more after the first meeting up there and see what happens. But other than that, the other thing, if you do need to come into this room, it will be managed by the district court. Judge Simpson will be in an office close to here, but district court, as far as court goes in this room, will be held through Teresa, who will be using Molly's office. So if you have to come in here for some reason, that's who we need to check with on schedule. But you won't need your ID and stuff for this first 4 or 5 months, but once they move over into this building, everything will be out of here and back up there. So it'll be a little different story. But right now you can still come in here and get something if you forgot it. They are going to put a gate in the chain link fence right here at the end of this Rent Me building that's out the window. So that people that are working in this building for the next few months just need to go out the back door, go in, sign in, get your hard hat if you need to go into the other side to get anything. So that's the main process that has to be used, but they will put a gate in here so it's easier for anybody to be able to come in. We are having construction meetings at 2 o'clock on every Monday in the EOC with the contractor. So far, they've been pretty quiet, just trying to figure out logistics, as we talked about this morning with fire access, ingress and egress for the public that's going to be in here while we're not. Need to take everything with you that you need, but IT will take care of our computers and the IT equipment. So, anything else come to mind that we haven't?
You're gonna steal it.
We're talking about taking the important stuff up to the
I got this from you.
So we really won't have desks up there or anything. It'll be a table in the Grizzly Room, and upstairs it'll be a table in the meeting room. Molly has a fairly small office, but she'll be in there next to planning and zoning. So if you're trying to find her, yes.
Madam Chair, will our master keys fit anything in the complex?
No, the complex is on a
Keypad.
it's on a keypad inside, but it's on an automatic door lock and unlock on time. And I think he said 7 in the morning, 6, yeah. That building will open at that time. So you can go in at that time. And then most of the other rental offices are keypad. But Molly will have any necessary keys that need be to get into either the workroom or downstairs, like I said, with the elevator key. So, but take what you might need. Be coming back for a while. And the laptops, IT is looking at whether they may need plugged in during that time that we're sitting there, depending on the length of our day. So they're gonna have to take a look at that setup, and that's maybe one reason why it won't work, but we'll try to figure it out. These computers will just be put in storage until we get back for now. So Molly has the ability, that's the other thing, is right now we have no ability to print anything here because the copiers have all been moved. But Molly's computer will allow anyone else to go in as a other user if we need to. If you need to get something printed up there while you're up there, Molly can do it, or we can do it on her computer. So, okay. Pauline's getting her mail to us, so we should be okay as far as that goes. Take care of it. Other than that, we haven't heard anything except a little frustration from the public for the rearranging, but I don't think we have much choice. But we'll work on the door signs, we'll work on directing people, and that should be about it. Something else comes up, let you know.
So the coffee pot won't be available till 9 a.m.
No, the coffee will be available at 8, just like it is now. It's going to actually be in P and Z's break room, which is like 2 doors from the meeting room we're gonna be in.
Yeah.
It's not much farther than this one. So we will have a coffee pot there, so.
Here, can I have coffee with you guys Tuesday?
You want us to make that much?
75 cents a cup.
I only have one cup.
Yeah, then we'll have to increase your budget. So, no, you're fine. There should be plenty. Okay, so. But I put it over there because that meeting room isn't used all the time, and if we were to happen to leave and that thing was still on, I'm a little worried about it.
It'd be a little heavy to have a room down here, get coffee and room back in there.
No, we'll take care of that. I don't know of anything else that's come to mind from the contractor, at least. They are gonna try to get the pay request done. Of course, mostly we'll be dealing with Roadhouse because they'll do with the subs. They are gonna get them to Jack, our engineering Casper, and then our Public Works Department. They'll both be signing off before the voucher is completed. The vouchers will be to Steve at the second Tuesday, and then by the third Tuesday of the month, they'll be on our voucher list. It'll just be a once a month payment. And they've set up a retainage account, or they're working on setting up a retainage account. So we should see those ones as we move forward. They did, just so you know, it's gonna be a while. The chillers are like, what'd they say, 12 months out. But those can be installed after the fact. So in the discussion on Monday, this fence out here where the one chiller exists, the city has agreed to the variance to just replace that chiller as sits. In today's world, it has to be set up a little bit differently under new regulations, and there is a second chiller, and they're still discussing how that's going to fit and where it's going to go. And we may end up losing 2 parking places right here on the north end of one of these routes so that it shortens it because of the way the fence has to sit. So we may lose 2 parking places, but we won't know that till spring, probably, when we know the actual equipment and the size. So don't forget your IDs if you come down here. And you do have to check in at the trailer.
If you want to get in the addition.
If you want to get into the addition at this point, you don't have to check in at the trailer to come into this building. But Teresa might appreciate you checking in because this will be listed as a courtroom. We don't have to empty everything, but you might, I don't know how our situation is going to be for pens and all that kind of stuff up there. You know, there's a few where we can put a box together here to just have that we have available up there. The court said we don't need to empty anything. These desks will be cleared off because of IT, and you guys have already cleared the back. So I think we're okay there, as far as I know.
Madam Chair, do we have a minute?
Yes, yes.
So we want to give you just an update on this. The manor has pulled the gift of the land, so right now we have no place to build. Linda Smith my board president has sent a letter to Governor Gordon asking that he consider putting money into his 2024 biennial legislative budget for the budget session. There were 3 senior centers that were denied. It was Thane, Sheridan, and Powell. The senior population in Park County is 30%, but that's 65 years and older. We provide services for people who are 60 years and older, so that percentage is much higher. We also have an issue with, or could be a potential problem with the new Wyoming State Fire Marshal. He's been telling people in Powell that he's going to shut us down. Our last visit from him cost us over $8,000 in repairs. Currently, the maintenance and repair on our current building is $18,000 to $20,000 a year. It's just eating us up. So now to hit where the letter that you guys received, we're wondering if we could put that 1 million that you committed into
escrow and restrict the principal withdrawal to the new building. And then the annual interest, we were wondering if that could be used for the maintenance of this building that's falling apart. And that the excess interest would accrue back into the escrow account, and the principal would return to Park County if unspent in 5 years, if we didn't come up with the other funds. Is that a possibility?
I'm not sure we can do that, Madam Chair. The money.
There's
so many strings attached to how we can do with this money. That would be the question I'd have to answer.
Well, and part of that goes a little bit deeper even into the legal reasons that the state denied the use, because they were using the same type of ARP funds. And they felt that the 3 new senior centers, excuse me, did not fit the definition of what the ARP money was required to do. So we do have it sitting in an ARP fund right now. We had done that in the 12 million fund, which is general, but we would really need to get deep into find out if there was any possibility of that happening, because normally this money has been allocated to use and get spent, especially the first round that was sent had to be appropriated by 24 and completely spent by 26. So that fund is off the table. That one cannot be used in any form like you're talking about. The second one has a few other strings attached to it. Even though it can be used for general expenses, we would need to check a little deeper, because I'm not sure an escrow account or saving it in that format would follow suit with what's allowed from the federal paperwork. But it is something we could look at. I don't know if that's the pleasure of the commission or not to set aside $1 million for that, or for a long-term situation. I'm sorry your land got pulled back too. That's another step in the wrong direction. But
so what happens to the $1 million? You just hold on to it?
We would probably appropriate it to other uses, where it could be used by other entities or ourselves in getting things done. We have multiple uses that we're doing right now, including the HVAC system for the courthouse and the addition. We have a sewer lagoons project through the county. We did do some medical things with Powell Valley Hospital. We've done several things that have been used out of all of these funds. So there's a whole lot more requests than there is money. I can put it that way, on things we can use it on. It's not appropriated for anything else right now. It's been left in the formula, but I just don't think your request will work with our understanding of how these monies are being handled. We can sure look a little deeper and make sure, but I just don't see that coming forward. Can you tell us a little bit about what the fire marshal is insisting that you do in order to keep the building open?
Well, the last thing the last time he was here, he wanted us to change out our water heater.
Okay.
Well, to do that, we had to change out the electrical in that one section. The water pressure, we had to change all that out.
Okay.
His comment was, I know you're trying to build a new senior center, but unless you're moving in the next couple months, then you need to get this done.
Okay.
I actually was contacted by 2 other businesses in Powell that were told that he told them that he was going to shut us down. So,
Okay. He hasn't told you that directly.
no,
Has he told you other things that need to happen in order to stay functioning?
not at this last, well, he did, but he didn't write them down. So those things I didn't deal with because they weren't written down.
Okay. Thoughts from the commissioners?
State fire inspector.
We have a new state fire inspector in the area.
We can look at it, Madam Chair. I mean, I'm willing to look at it. I just don't think I don't think we can do it. That's why. There will be Madam Chair, there'll be a gathering of people, give us some answers coming up next week. So,
Okay.
I think that if we approach the issue or bring it up to maybe some of the other commissioners or maybe even the governor's office,
Sure.
we should be able to get some information in that direction.
We do have a state county officials meeting next week,
Okay.
so we can have a little bit of discussion there with some of the top 5 and the other commissioners in the state, and see what happens.
So Madam Chairman and Commissioners, so we had a couple of other thoughts.
Okay.
We were wondering if we could, we are currently a privately owned nonprofit, but we have talked with the city of Powell and they would be willing to be the pass-through or the owners of the building. They wouldn't want to take on any of the operation costs, which we were fine with that. But as far as the owners of the building, so that we could maybe qualify for 1% sales tax or a senior center district.
Okay.
Is any of that possible?
I think that's a possibility. We have meetings throughout the year with the leadership of the municipalities, and that might be a conversation that we can have after talking to the state and finding out what the pros and cons are there. I don't have any reason we couldn't talk about it.
Madam Chair, we do meet on the 15th, correct, November,
Yes. So
with the cities.
that's the plan right now. Yeah, hopefully it won't change. That's a long ways out for this group to make a commitment on the time, but
So is there anything that we need to be doing to increase our chances?
you're talking about chances on a new building?
Yeah, like the 1% or the senior center district or something.
Okay. I'm a little worried about the 1% only in the fact that that's a couple years out. Because you have to do it through the election. And it takes a long time for that stuff to, number 1, get set up, and number 2, to get passed. And then you still have everything else that goes after that with design, construction, all those
Right.
things. So if there's things that they are not going to allow to keep you operating until that can happen, I think that's kind of top of the list, is to find out what might get you through.
Okay.
For right now. Does anybody else have any other thoughts as far as making sure that it's at least viable until we can figure out an alternative? Okay.
So, and I will say that talking with the city, with Zach Thornton and Mayor Wetzel, they have both said that he really does not have that authority.
Right.
Because it has to go back to when that building was built. So I'm not sure if it's just an idle threat that he's throwing out, or
Well, it could be such thing as adding more fire protection. I mean, it could be some things that you can do within the structure that would allow
be
it.
costly, but
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying it won't be without dollars, but if it'll keep you in there, other than worrying about, 6 or 8 million.
right.
That might work for a period of time, but
Okay.
let's do some research and figure out. And in the meantime, you might sit down with the fire marshal again and ask him, if you're still a year or 2 out or 3 years out, what are the things that would need to be changed
Okay.
in his view? And then you might let us know, but we'll work on it from the other direction and see what we can find out.
Wonderful.
Okay,
And one other question is, does the county have any land possible that they'd be willing to give us for building site
Or sell us.
or sell us? After you give us some money, no.
I don't know how much land there is around the annex. That'd be the only land I can think of in the Powell area that we,
There's 2 lots to the west of
Is
the
there?
annex.
Yeah.
It's possible.
it's something to look
We
at.
should-
I'll just put that on the notes to talk to Brian, our public works people, and see what's their planning and zoning, either one. We can talk to them. And what was the size of the parcel that was bought back?
So originally it was over an acre. It was
Okay.
about 1.2 acres.
Okay,
But they had us down under an acre by the time we got to the drawing.
okay.
I did actually talk with Tom Churchill to ask about some land that he's got out there, and he suggested that area west of the annex
Annex.
building.
I think that's the only thing the county actually owns, because the library and the museum and all those are on federal deeds that the city of Powell has, so.
Yeah.
Existing
Do
buildings.
do we even own the museum? We own the building. I don't think.
We don't own the building yet.
Yeah.
We're working on that.
Yeah.
Okay. I wish I could give you a different answer today, but I think that's where we're at right now, is a little more research and, I can't say that we'll pull this right now as far as that goes. Let's see what we can find out in the next few months. There's no
Okay.
super rush on changing our paperwork.
Okay.
So, okay,
Really
Thank you.
appreciate the million that you offered us.
Yeah.
That's how much we got.
yeah, we were hoping it would work too, but. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
We'll see
Yeah,
what we can find.
We'd have to subdivide it. It looks like the annex is encompassing about half of the property.
And how big is the parcel?
3 acres
Total?
total.
So we're using an acre and a half.
And it is. Where does it say where zoning it is?
It's probably around. city of Powell,
GRP
it would be
probably, so we go down
yeah.
to 1.
The other thing there is water.
Well, that's, yeah,
Water would be, but it's a possibility. We've looked at it too, to get water to the annex. It's just expensive. So,
In that area.
yeah, well, the annex is actually on a well. And,
Yeah.
it's never been, the city water system is about a block to a block and a half south,
block and a
right?
half south, yeah, when the annex isn't in the city.
Right,
It,
right.
I don't
Borders.
know that we would, disagree of annexing it in, but you know where Dr. Haberlin used to live?
Uh-huh.
He's a holdout piece. He's in the county. And he isn't, but the people that own that property.
Okay.
And according to Zach, when 3 sides of a property are surrounded, then they can force annexation. And we'll have to double check that with Zach, but
So
I mean, but the city services need to come up north on Road 9
okay.
to the corner and then over. We looked into it a little bit and it was gonna be about $250,000.
Yeah, it might be a benefit to both of us in the future.
We considered, because we were having questionable well issues and
Right.
we thought, well, why don't we just get some of a city solution?
We did talk with Zach and Mayor Wetzel, and they both said that, if we could get the county to agree, they would look very seriously at annexing
Right.
that into the city.
We can look at all the options, see what we can come up with.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Move to adjourn, Madam Chair. Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. We're adjourned.
Right.
Right. You don't have to.
Back to you, power of your authority.
Yeah. No further business.
Okay, see you guys. Good, interesting one.
Okay, you got all your stuff?
All I need.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
It looks like that.
It does look like you moved on.
I don't know.
Is that your budget list or phone list?
I don't think that.
No, but I'm just thinking we'll just.
Phone list.
You may be the next commissioner.